Welcome back to Beyond the Book, where we explore the intricate webs that connect what we read and how we read it. I'm Alex, your host, and today we're diving deep into the world of Australian literature. It's a vibrant yet fragile ecosystem, and we're asking a big question. Who holds the power in this literary landscape? Is it the prizes, the publishers, the universities, or perhaps the readers themselves?
Absolutely, Alex. As we navigate through this episode, we'll peel back the layers of what's happening in Australian literature today, particularly how activism and celebrity culture are reshaping who gets read, rewarded, and ultimately remembered. It's a fascinating time for literature here in Australia.
Right off the bat, let's talk about the Stella Prize. This award is a shining example of how prize culture can impact the literary scene. Eugene, can you give us a brief overview of what the Stella Prize is and its significance?
Of course, the Stella Prize is a major literary award celebrating Australian women and non-binary writers. It goes beyond just awarding a winner. It's a powerful vehicle for change in an industry that has historically sidelined these voices. The prize not only offers financial support and prestige, but also influences what readers choose to engage with. It confronts inequalities within the publishing industry head-on.
That's a great point. Activism within the literary community often takes shape through initiatives like the Stella Schools program and the annual Stella Count, which tracks the presence of women in literary reviews. Can you elaborate on how the count contributes to exposing gender bias in the literature landscape?
Absolutely. The Stella count turns abstract notions of inequality into hard statistics. By counting who gets reviewed and how often, we move from subjective impressions of gender disparity in literary critique to concrete data that editors and publishers must acknowledge. For instance, by 2019 and 2020, the count showed that women were reviewing as much as men, effectively shedding light on gender inequality in literary criticism.
And that's crucial because it pushes the industry to confront and question its own biases. So, what about the concept of cultural capital? How do literary prizes like the Stella contribute to the distribution of value and status in literature?
Great question. Cultural capital is a term coined by sociologist Pierre Bourdieu, and it refers to non-financial social assets that promote social mobility. In the literary world, prizes confer legitimacy and status on authors. However, these mechanisms can also reinforce existing inequalities. The emergence of the Stella Prize, for example, was a direct response to chronic underrepresentation of women's work in awards like the Miles Franklin. It highlights how prizes can sometimes prioritize certain narratives over others.
So, in essence, the Stella Prize reframes literary value, considering gender, race, sexuality, and other marginalized identities in its selection process. This means that the conversations around literature are stretching beyond just the texts themselves and deep into societal structures and biases.
Exactly. Now, shifting gears a little, let's talk about the role of authors within this media-saturated landscape. Since the 1970s, there's been a significant shift where authors are not just writers, but also public figures who must navigate the media sphere. Could you share more about what this entails?
Certainly. The media sphere is this ever-pressurized environment full of television appearances, podcasts, social media, and live events where authors must perform their narratives. Being mediagenic, meaning having that ability to convey an engaging persona across multiple platforms, has become increasingly important. For instance, writers like Thomas Keneally and Richard Flanagan have cultivated compelling public identities that resonate with audiences, contributing to their status as literary celebrities.
So, it's not just about having written a great book anymore. It's about how well an author can brand themselves and connect with their audience. How does that intersection of literature and entertainment affect the texts themselves?
The merging of literature and entertainment has blurred the lines between art and advertising. Partnerships between corporate sponsors and literary adaptations, think car brands promoting a new film based on a novel, transform literary texts into vehicles for brand messages. While this can enhance a book's visibility, it raises questions about artistic integrity. Is the story being prioritized, or is the branding taking center stage?
It's a tricky terrain to navigate, for sure. And as we've mentioned, It seems that while there's critical acclaim assigned to literature, Australian fiction struggles to appear prominently on national bestseller lists, right?
Exactly. Even when award-winning authors release new works, they often don't see the commercial success that one might expect. This disconnection between critical prestige and market performance highlights the necessity for authors to engage in performance and personal storytelling as a core means of survival in what some term a republic of entertainment.
Now let's take a moment to think about the place of Australian literature within universities. It appears that while authors are reaching out into the public sphere, academic support for Australian literature is on a decline. What's leading to this?
Well, there was a peak in interest during the late 20th century. But now, only slightly more than half of larger Australian universities offer courses specifically on Australian literature, and many of these are irregular. The central focus seems to have shifted from critical study of canonized works to teaching students how to produce their own creative content. While this shift is important, it risks the potential diminishing of national literary traditions.
And this brings up significant cultural questions about the identity of Australian literature. What happens to our national stories if the institutions that legitimize them begin to fade away?
Exactly, and it raises the stakes for all of us as readers and advocates. This complex ecosystem, where activism, celebrity, market forces, and diminishing academic support converge, depicts a precarious landscape for Australian literature. As readers, we have choices that matter. Following progressive initiatives like the Stella Prize, engaging with Australian books, attending author events, and supporting literature programs in schools and universities can all contribute to the robustness of our literary landscape.
It's a powerful realization that we, as readers, hold a piece of the responsibility for keeping literature alive. Even small actions can make a difference. By seeking diverse voices and supporting underrepresented authors, we can help to ensure that Australian literature remains not only vibrant, but essential to the stories we tell about ourselves.
And as we close this episode of Beyond the Book, I encourage all our listeners to consider how the choices they make will affect the literary community. Let's champion the voices that deserve to be heard and the stories that shape our culture. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, keep reading.